The following video is going to show you how to use div tags to lay out your page. You've been using tables, and now what I want you to do is learn to use div tags to organize and do the whole entire page layout. Before I do that, I do want to talk about HTML5's new layout tags. HTML5 does have new layout tags, but I don't recommend using them just yet. I just don't think that they're necessarily, I don't see any advantages to using them at this point. Maybe there are some SEO, search engine slight advantages, but if people have JavaScript turned off and other things, they've been messing with those tags. So I don't suggest using them because that can really mess things up. I currently will recommend everyone use div tags for the time being unless you have a very specific reason for using the new ones. So div tags it is. So this page that I'm looking at has a header, a little row right below the header that has some links. It has some links on the left-hand side, has a middle section for content, a right section for content, and then a bottom footer. So basically this is 1, 2, 3, 4 rows and 1, 2, 3 columns. I'm going to show you how to make this page. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is show you how to make this page very simply without the links here, just to make it very easy to show you how to start to organize and set something up with a div tag. All right, so let me go into Dreamweaver here. I'm just using Dreamweaver because I can show you the page and the code at the same time. You can absolutely do this in Notepad if you would like to. All right, so when creating a div tag, the first thing you need to do is before you even start making your page, you need to know how many rows and columns you want it to be. So you have to organize it. I like the paper prototype, draw it quick on a piece of paper and kind of see what it's going to look like. However you want to do that, you have to do it. Okay, so when making this div tag, when organizing the page, I like to think of this as I'm using so I act like I'm taking like a cookie pan or a pie pan, any kind of pan, because the first thing you want to create is you have to create a container, or even think of it like a suitcase, is maybe a better example. Think of like you have this suitcase and you're going to put all your clothes in to pack. Okay, so let's say that this border surrounding everything is your suitcase, and each one of these squares that I'm highlighting right now is one of your pieces of clothing. So the first thing you need to do when creating your div tag, so first of all, let's even go back a step further. I have an HTML page. I created a style sheet and attached it. You should know how to do that at this point, so I'm not going to go over that. Style sheet is attached. Okay, let's go into our style sheet. Oops. Okay. First thing I'm going to do on my style sheet is I'm going to create the suitcase. I'm going to create the suitcase. The suitcase is also a container. I call it a container. That's really what it is. It's a container that holds everything. So I create my suitcase. You can see on this sample page, all that I've done is I've given a number symbol, wrote the word container, because that's what that could be number symbol, my name. It could be anything. But I just call it container so that I know what it is. I've given it a width of 900 pixels. And I've made it centered by typing in margin 0 auto. That's it. If I don't want it centered, I want it on the left, I would just simply get rid of this. Just simply get rid of this. So I've created this container, and I've just given it a width. Okay, then I know, now let's put everything in my container. So I got to start writing it. So I'm going to put everything in. I know that I'm going to have this header, where I'm going to have a header image. I know that's going to be as big as my container. So I simply say head, width, 900 pixels. That's it. And I have a header. I've created this horizontal column right underneath my header. And I've said hello. My links could go here, but this is where I could put some links or some information, a saying. I've said horizontal column, width 900 pixels. Notice how I can just keep making rows by coming up with a name and saying width 900 pixels, and it'll be a row. I've created a left. Okay, now let's create my center columns. So I'm going to have 3 of them: left, middle, right. Now there are a few pieces of code I'm using here. I'm not just using width again. Now I'm using something called the float. I talked about float earlier in a different video, but basically what it does is it helps place, say, where in the structure this item should go: left, center, or right. Like, think of it like alignment, like how am I aligning text? So I'm going to call this first one left column. So I'm going to have left column, middle column, right column. And I'm choosing these names. They're just variable names, but I call them what they're going to be so that I can go back and say, oh, I know exactly what that is. If I just called this column, I wouldn't know where it is. I call it middle column. I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is. So my first column, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say clear both. Why am I saying clear both? What I'm doing is sometimes I like to clear things whenever I start a new row and my new row has like any kind of spacing. So like this was automatically 900 pixels, so I didn't need to clear anything from the other one, from the top one, because my container is also 900 pixels. But I know this new row is going to be like this. I know this box is only 150 pixels, so I'm going to clear. What this does is it clears any formatting and spacing from my horizontal column above it. So I always do, and good practice would have been to do that here as well. I just don't need to, but I can clear both. It just clears everything. It clears like, so if I say float left and I didn't say float left on this next one, it could automatically do that depending on what browser you're using and how they're reading the code. By clearing both, I'm getting rid of that any alignment issue. I'm just basically saying start from scratch. Clear both basically means start from scratch on this row. I float left because I want this to be a left column, so it's going to snap down here. Otherwise, it could snap down to the right or snap in the middle, depending on what browser I'm using, because browsers interpret the code, can interpret things differently, which is why you have to be exact. I say float left, so a left align, and be 150 pixels. That's why. I could make it 200 pixels. I basically added these up to be 900 pixels. Actually, I made them 800 pixels, just so I have a little leeway here, because I wanted some space. I could have changed that, though. All right, I create a middle column. I also float that to the left, because what I'm saying is put that next to this one. Then I create a right column, and I also say float left. Put that column right next to the middle column. Smack it to it. And I've given these each a width. Then I create my bottom column. And again, I clear both because I want to get rid of that. I want this to be on a whole new line. So I get rid of all these, all their formatting. I say clear everything, start over, and width 900 pixels. And now I've created all the elements to create what you see here. I've created the elements. Now this is my CSS. Now I need to put them into HTML. So let's look at the HTML. Okay. So I've declared it's an HTML page. I've added my style sheet. You guys all know that. What's important here is what's in the body. So let's take a look. Okay, so remember, when working with HTML, we have an opening and closing tag. So the first thing I've done is I've typed in div id equals, and quotation marks, container. And I close it. So I have div id container, and I've closed the div tag. Where did I close the div tag? So this is the first part of the body. I've closed it here at the very bottom, the last thing. This is the closing div tag. Remember, this container, if we go back to our CSS, let's get back here. I called this container. That's where the word's coming from. Container, div ID, container. My container was my suitcase. So every single one of these pieces here goes in my suitcase. So that's why this div tag, the close, is at the bottom. Everything else is inside of it. And then all that I do is I put the other div tags inside the container. For example, div ID head, because remember I created that head. If I go back here, div ID, here's the head. I called it head. So we're going to have a horizontal column, a left column, middle column. Okay, inside that container, I have div ID head, and I close the div. Then I put all my content for my head right here inside those div tags. I said header image goes here, so here I could insert an image, and it would put it right in there. Then I created my horizontal column, which says hello, my links could go here. I said div ID horizontal column, I closed it, and then I put my content in. Then I have the left column, same thing, div ID left column, div ID middle column, div ID right column, div ID bottom column. And this is where my closing container div tag is. Notice how they're in the order that I wanted them to be on the page. And another reason that they're in the order, like left, middle, right, is because I did those floats. Because I wanted them left column, clear both, float left, float left, float left. Now I could put these in any order I want to right here in the CSS page. But this is what determines where they're going to actually show up on the page. So if I wanted to make this page 2 columns, I could simply get rid of right column. It's gone. Look at that. It's just gone. And I could go into my CSS and make this bigger. I may have had it, what, 500 pixels? I could make it 700, and it would extend all the way out. I could, let's say I don't want a place here that says, you know, hello, my links could go here. That horizontal, I could just get rid of it. So you can see how I can do various things like that. How I can start to play around with what my page is going to look like. So that's the basics of using div tags and how you do it. All right, my next video that I'm going to create is going to show you how to add these links into this page like this. Because it's also part of the CSS content that I have here. Thank you.